I am now live on Shorts. I think I am. I better make sure about that. Because I remember the last time I did that, I was wrong. All right, bear with me for a minute. Yeah, and this also acts as the Shorts going live music. All right, let me just, because I always want to make sure that I have at least that chat pulled up, because for some reason there's like no easier way to have both at the same time, like in one window. So it gets really, really annoying to manage, but it's fine. It's a minor inconvenience. All right. All right, there it is. All right, y'all. So to those watching on YouTube Shorts there on the live feed, welcome. I am going to now start talking about Challengers. Challengers is the new movie that's coming out this week, starring Zendaya. Before I go into that, AKB, the Jim Henson Anthology show was Jim Henson's The Story. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I knew it was like Storyteller something. But yeah, I remember watching that too. It didn't do well, unfortunately, but it was very creative whenever he was, because he did a lot of puppetry work on that and a lot of creative things that he did for that show. I don't know if that's available on Disney Plus or not, but it was definitely an interesting show. I remember it and I enjoyed it. I think it was definitely geared more towards a mature audience. I don't think it was really geared to like your Sesame Street crowd or whatever like that. But I thought it was well done. I thought it was definitely well done. All right. So, Challengers, new movie from Zendaya, also starring Mike Feist. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Feist or Faust. I don't know, Feist. Josh O'Connor. It is directed by Luca Guadagnino. Guadagnino. It's an Italian director who I actually really enjoy. I like his movies. The last movie I saw of his that he put out was Bones and All with Timothée Chalamet. The one interesting thing about Luca, and I'm learning more about Luca because this is a director that I've been aware of, but I'm not really familiar with his filmography. But I this whole week I've been doing like a rewatch of his filmography because Blake and I are planning to talk about him in an upcoming episode of the Movie Time podcast. So if you want to check out what our thoughts are on his filmography and our combined thoughts on Challengers, the movie coming out this week, definitely tune in there. You could find the Movie Time podcast on your podcast platform of choice, wherever podcasts are found or listened to. But the one interesting thing about Luca and his filmography is that he does a lot of movies that really explore sexuality, especially what some would consider to be taboo sexuality and eroticism. Bones and All explored the relationship between two people who were kind of like, lack of a better way of saying, flesh eaters. They weren't exactly like werewolves or, those type of like, what did they call them? Lycanthropes, whatever. They weren't exactly that, but he was kind of hinting that there is some of that in there because, activity and things like that happen more towards the full moon. But it explored not just them dealing with living a life like that, but also kind of the relationship that two of them had, because each thought that they were individuals who there were no other equal to them, and them finding each other, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the movie that really brought Luca to the forefront and have him become more aware as far as movie going audiences are concerned, especially during the Oscars, was Call Me by Your Name, another movie that he directed with Timothy Chalamet, and the one person we don't really talk about anymore, Armie Hammer. And it's funny talking about him doing a movie about people who enjoy eating flesh, and then you have Armie Hammer with his accusations of being a cannibal. Is I don't know if there's a connection there. Maybe it's just coincidence. And again, these are just allegations too. Even though if you watch that documentary, what is it? What is it called? Hammer, World of Hammer, or something like that. Very enlightening stuff that's happening there, and it just sounds like his whole family is pretty messed up. But that movie explored the sexuality and relationship between two men, not just two men, but an older gentleman and a younger guy too. So again, that could be considered very taboo, but he doesn't shy away from sexuality and eroticism. And the more movies of his that I watch, the more I'm noticing that that is a very common theme. I haven't gotten up to the part where he does the movie Suspiria, which is more of like a horror type of movie, and I don't really know the story behind all of that, but I will find out soon because that is on my list to watch today. But Challengers is a movie that basically explores a lot of these little things here, where you have, it's very easy to say like, oh, this is a movie about a threesome because you look at the trailer and that's pretty much what they put out there. But it's a little bit more than that. It's more about utilizing sexuality for control and for accomplishing things that a certain person want to accomplish. And I know I don't want to say it's like dominatrixy like or anything like that, but you could tell that Zendaya's character uses a lot of this to her benefit in a way. And the overall plot is basically you have these three tennis players who grew up together in the tennis circuit, right? Zendaya, who plays Tashi, is the more popular up and coming tennis superstar. And you have these two guys, you know, Art and Patrick, who are kind of new to the scene, and they trying to make a name for themselves. They play duos and all that. They remind me a lot of like what are the Jensens? If you remember back in the day, going way back, there was a tennis duo. They were brothers. And I believe they were called the Jensen brothers or the Henson brothers or something like that. They're a little bit rock and roll. I loved watching them during the U.S. Open because they were very energetic and exciting. One of them is called Luke. I think his name was Luke. And I remember one time I was watching the U.S. Open and someone from the audience screamed out, "Luke, may the force be with you." And he kind of pretended like he was swinging his racket like a lightsaber. Like I said, very rock and roll. They kind of remind me of like those guys. But basically they notice like, you know, Tashi is there and they're trying to win her affection. And it's one of the first times that you have two guys that they find themselves like pining over the same woman. And she realizes that, and she kind of, in a way, uses that to her benefit to kind of like get the best out of each of them. Because at the end of the day, all she really cares about is tennis. And she's very, very focused on tennis. And the rest of the movie kind of explores how those relationships progressed in a certain time frame. I believe it was 12 to 13 years. And the movie goes back and forth within this time frame because the movie basically starts off in the present, and then we're going back to see how these relationships have formed and whether they were flourishing or not flourishing and all that. And it all comes to a major climactic end where after a long separation of the friends, they now have to battle each other in this one match. And Zendaya is kind of like the puppet master behind the scenes because she's rooting for her guy to win, who she's married to now, and they have a child. But she still has very strong ties with the other guy, who they had a relationship before. So she's like, hey, I want my guy to win, and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh yeah, well, you know what you got to do, and all this craziness and all that. So you could kind of get the sense of where this is going here, where it's like, if you want me to lose, you're gonna have to sleep with me, and let's reminisce back in the good old times and all that. Um, and there was always a competition between the two guys over the affection and all that of Zendaya's character. So it's a very interesting roller coaster ride of relationships and kind of their careers within the tennis world, because Zendaya was a prominent star. She gets badly injured. She can no longer play. So now she becomes a coach, and she takes on the tutelage of teaching one of the guys to become a tennis star, even though she may have been in a relationship with the other guy. So that also causes a rift and all that. It's just a lot of craziness and everything. And the way that the movie is paced all throughout, it does definitely give you anxiety. It's like there are moments where it's kind of like thrilling, especially at the end, where it's just like back and forth, just like a tennis match, where it's just like, what's going to happen here? You don't know what's going on, because as these two guys are battling out on the court, we are getting flashbacks of all the things that were happening behind the scenes leading up to that match. And they do this great thing with this soundtrack, which is, by the way, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Again, an amazing duo when it comes to soundtracks, movie soundtracks. And they're back here. And the type of soundtrack that they put, every time there is a moment of contention, a moment of conflict, the music, it seems to go up like multiple levels, where it's drowning out a lot of the dialogue, but it's so intense that you, as the audience member, you're feeling it. You're feeling like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Are they going to fight? Are they going to duel it out? Are they going to have sex? Are they, is he going to find out? Is this going to happen? Oh, I don't know what's happening here. It's crazy. Oh, and they do a really good job at building that tension all throughout the movie. This is also one of the, I think it's easy to say that this is the first movie where Zendaya is the main draw here. She's the lead actress here. The two other guys, I would call them co-actors in this film. But Zendaya has always been a secondary or tertiary character in a lot of the movies that she's in. Remember, she started off as a Disney person. She did Disney movies. She's also a singer, so she had like a singing career. I don't know if she still does that now. But her movie debut, feature film debut, I'm not talking about Disney movies, I'm talking about like feature on-screen debut, was really Spider-Man Homecoming. And that was the first time that a lot of audiences who are not familiar or who grew up watching Disney, the Disney Channel, were exposed to Zendaya for the very first time. And from there, obviously she was in Dune. And she did other movies, like there was a Netflix movie that she did with John David Washington called Malcolm and Mari. She was in The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman. But again, she was just like secondary, tertiary, maybe even third billing in those casts, right? So this is the first time that she is actually fronting a movie on her own. And I saw it on Monday night. It was a special early screening. And the audience there, you could tell this was like a Euphoria audience. And what I mean by that, because she's also on the show Euphoria on HBO, you could tell this was that generation who loves Zendaya. And Zendaya is a major influencer out there, and she has a lot of followers, and everyone was eating this movie up. For a Monday night. Now, granted, this week here in New York City, it is spring break, so a lot of people are off from school. But for a Monday night, for a special screening for this movie, it was at least 80% capacity. One theater, one screen. And I was shocked. I was surprised. But at the same time, I wasn't, because I knew the star power that Zendaya has. And she's one of the very few actresses out there that still has that star power, that can draw in audiences, draw in her following to go, support and watch a movie that she's in or a project that she's attached to, whatever the case is. Everyone loves the relationship that she has with Tom Holland. So it is very fascinating to see all of that. And she shines extremely bright in this movie. It is amazing how powerful she is throughout this whole thing. And the one thing that always threw me off about Zendaya is that she looks so young. She still looks like a teenager who's trying to play an adult. You know, there's a lot of sexuality in this movie, very erotic scenes with her involved. And there are certain moments where I'm just like, I don't know if I feel right watching this and actually getting turned on by it because she looks like a kid. But I could really see the appeal of Zendaya, and she is very, very strong in this. She makes the movie. But along with her, the performances from Mike and Josh were fantastic as well. I mean, very strong performances from both of them. Mike, who plays Art, is the guy who's a little bit more naive. He's the one that is really fawning over Tashi because he, wants a relationship and he wants to be with somebody that he can love and they share their passions together. While Patrick, played by Josh O'Connor, is more of the douchebag. He's more like he'll sleep with anyone he can. He really doesn't want to get tied down. He wants to get his way all the time. So he's kind of like the asshole, right? So you have that dynamic going on between the two. And at first, it's interesting. You get to find out that Zendaya's character of Tashi is kind of the same way. She's kind of like, there are moments where, the question of, well, he doesn't love you. And she's like, who said I was looking for love? If I was looking for love, then I wouldn't be with him and all that. Like, don't tell me what I'm looking for. A very strong-minded character, strong-willed character. And like I said, you could tell that she uses a lot of this sexuality and control and power to get her way and to get what she wants out of everything. And her main focus all the time is tennis. Tennis, tennis, tennis. That's it. And, especially like at the end where she's already married to Art, they have a child. You could tell like the marriage is not doing that well because he's not doing well as a professional tennis player. And you could see like the interest there is waning thin. And she's trying her best to get him back out there, get him back to his, top game, so to speak. And she does whatever she can to kind of do that for him. And if it means going back to Josh and sleeping with him to make sure that he loses, then she will do it. Reluctantly. She didn't want to do it at first, but she gave in and she did it anyway. And the climax at the end, and I know, again, if you're watching this, obviously, I'm going to spoil stuff because that's what I do here. I talk about movies freely because, that's just what I do. So if I'm spoiling stuff for you, I do apologize. And if you don't want to hear any more, then by all means, skip ahead if you're watching this on a replay or come back later and I'll be talking about something different. But at the end, again, the huge climactic end where we're now tied. Sudden death, right? And you can see like both guys are just like exhausted and they're one-upping each other. And Art has this bad habit of getting frustrated. He's kind of like a McEnroe. Smashes his racket, he curses, and he's getting penalized and all that. And Patrick, the asshole, knows that about him. So he's kind of playing with him and toying with him, smirking and all. Knowing that he slept with his wife, knowing that what he's supposed to do, they have this little thing where going backwards, when Patrick hooked up with Tashi for the very first time, the two guys had a conversation and like, so did you sleep with her? And he's like, well, I can't tell you that. Gentleman never tells. And I was like, all right, well, give me a sign. Like if you slept with her, serve the most powerful serve that you've done, or give me a tell. And he does this thing where he puts his ball in the middle of the racket before he's about to serve. And that was like his tell. And when he did that the first time, the guy's like, "Ah, you dog, blah blah." See what you did there. And mind you, again, you have to think about it. These two guys have not seen each other for years. So you have Patrick who's serving to Art, and again, music is blasting, high tension, anxiety is like at all-time level. You're like at an 11 at this point. Right before Patrick serves, he does that same tell, and you can see Art is just like, what? What the? He looks at Tashi in the stands, and she's kind of looking at him like, no, don't believe him. I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, this and that. And they start having this crazy ass intense match. Final set, final game, final whatever you want to call it. Where they're like pretty much both at the net, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then one guy jumps up about to spike it. The other guy jumps about to spike it as well. And they jump at the same time, and they meet in the middle and they hug it out. And they're like, I love you, man. Oh my God, we're bros. And we pan back to Zendaya's character, Tashi, in the screen, and she stands up and she screams like, yeah, fuck yeah. And that's where the movie ends. And I know by the way I'm explaining, you're probably like, what the fuck? What kind of an ending is that? It's just a crazy, all-out rock and roll ending. We're at the end of the day, we're all just adults, we're all just humans here. And can't we all just get along? Actually, I don't know if that's what the ending means. You blew it! But that's how the movie ends. Where there's like no resolution. We don't know who wins the match. Zendaya now has this passion and fire within her that she loves seeing her two favorite guys hug it out. You know? It's like everyone grab a dick. That's basically what this ending was. So who knows? Maybe the ending was like, oh yeah, they're all going to team up and run the train on her in the back. I don't know. You know, it's just some weird, wacky, crazy, rock and roll intense ending. But I got to tell you, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved every single minute of it because, again, it was just such an intense, and I guess in a way of like an orgasm when you climax, it was a major release at the end. Whoosh! Right? Now you could breathe a sigh of relief. Everything's done. Looks like everything's cool. But if you're looking for an ending with a resolution, you're going to probably be very upset and disappointed by this movie. But with all that being said, the movie was fantastic. And I would say, again, we're just now in April. We still have a lot of year left here. This easily sneaks into my top 5 movies of the year so far. And I've seen quite a bit of movies this year already so far. But from beginning to end, this movie was a lot of fun. Now, it is not without its little problems. There are moments in the middle where it felt like it dragged a little bit. And I felt like, oh, this could have been buttoned up a little bit, because the thing that LOWKEY does, and he kind of, I would say he suffers a little bit from, is that he spends a lot of time at a single shot, even when there's nothing happening. So we could be looking at a driveway that the character kind of walked up on, and then we're still on that damn driveway after they walk by. These are just artistic takes that he does, right? Or we linger on a certain person's face even when they're done talking. Yeah, and if you look back at his movies, this is something that he does all the time. But if you were to button a lot of that stuff up, the movie's not long already. The movie is, I believe, a good hour, and it's like under 2 hours. You know, oh, actually, I'm wrong. It's 2 hours and 11 minutes. All right. So if you button a lot of the stuff up, then you could easily have made this movie an hour and like 15 minutes. But with that said, still, it was a wild ass ride from beginning to end. Roller coaster. Very sexy at times. Very anxiety ridden, tension filled. A lot of great moments, but the performances itself, Zendaya, number one on top, very strong, very fascinating, very energetic, and what's that? Uh, Magnetic performance. She draws you in, man. She really knows how to draw you in, and there are certain ways that she acts with her eyes that really, really draws you in, and and then sometimes you don't even know what she's thinking. You think she may be thinking one thing, and then she'll surprise you like right away with something else. And I like again, Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor, fantastic performances between the two of them too. Great chemistry with all three of them. If there was something that was off, you would know, and it wouldn't have made this movie enjoyable. But you had amazing chemistry between the three of them. Strong, energetic, and very magnetized all throughout. So I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I think on Letterboxd I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's definitely easily one of my top 5 films. It's not going to be for everyone. It's really not, but for me, it was definitely powerful. It was a powerful movie, and I'm really glad I got to see it early. And going into this weekend, it challenges Civil War, that's been number one for 2 weeks in a row. Abigail, the latest horror movie that came in second last week. I would say that Challengers will easily overtake the box office this weekend because of the huge following that she has amongst her fans and her followers. They're all going to want to see her in this movie. They're going to get a lot of her. Those who are fans of her on Euphoria are probably going to be very satisfied with her performance here. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to pull in a lot of money. I'm going to say maybe 20 to 25 million this weekend, which is for a movie like this is a lot. It's a lot. But it'll be interesting to see what the box office is going to look like after this weekend. But it's definitely going to come in at number one, with Civil War coming in at number two. It may be a close race. Who knows? But you have that other movie that's coming out this weekend, Boy Kills World, with Bill Skarsgård, that I'm planning to watch this weekend. That's more of like an action flick, but it's not really being heavily marketed. And I don't know how familiar or aware a lot of people are with that movie. I want to see it because I want to see what Bill can do in an action flick, knowing that he's coming out with The Crow later on this year. So I want to see what he can do here, because that may dictate what I'm going to see him as when he portrays Eric Draven as The Crow later on this year. So yeah, so that's Challengers. That is my review on Challengers. Of course, if you're watching this on a replay, or if you're live and you happen to have seen this movie already, because I believe here in New York, nationwide, they had that special screening on Monday. Not all theaters had it, but select theaters had it. I was lucky enough that I was able to go see it then. On Wednesday, there was a special kind of screening again in the city. And of course, the movie started with previews yesterday. So if you happen to have seen it already, let me know your thoughts on this movie and what you thought about it and what you thought about Zendaya's performances there. I am looking forward to seeing her do more movies like this. Not exactly like this, but I mean, more. I want to see her lead more movies, because I think she is very powerful in what she does, and more so than anything that is franchise related. And I'm talking about like Dune or Spider-Man. I want to see her branch out more and do more movies like this. All right, so that's Challengers. AKB, well, WTF, what kind of ending was that? Yeah, I know. Top 5, say word. Yep, I stand by it. But like I said, it's April, so anything can happen for the rest of the year. But for me right now, top 5 for me. All right, moving on. The other movie that I had a chance to see, and it's funny, I did a double feature actually on Monday. Since I was already at the theater, I was like, oh, you know what? Since I'm here, let me watch this other movie. And that's Guy Ritchie's The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Very long-ass title. But it stars Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson, Isaac Gonzalez, and a whole bunch of other folks. Carrie Elwes has a small role in it. Rory Kinnear. Some of those names I'm sure you're very familiar with. And it's directed by Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie is a fascinating director right now. And the reason why I say that is because he's been he's been like a machine when it's coming to projects. I think it was last year we already had a movie from him. Now we have this. He has another movie coming out later this year. He has a Netflix show that just dropped called The Gentleman. This guy has been like pumping them out left and right. However, as you can see by the title card by my lower thirds, Guy Ritchie dud. His movies have not been doing well. He's pumping them out, but his movies have not been doing well in the box office and reception wise as well. So I'm going to pull this up because I want to see all the stuff that he's done. And it's kind of a shame too, because I want to say that Guy Ritchie movies, I loved his earlier stuff. He's put out some amazing movies in the very early parts of his career. Hold on, sorry. Here we go. Movies. Movies. I'm at the movies. Hey, everybody. I mean, you got Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. You have Snatch. Those movies are some of my favorite movies of his from earlier in his career. He's done the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr., which I thought were great. Rock and Rolla, which is fantastic. And then, he has his misses, like Man from U.N.C.L.E., King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Operation Fortune. He also directed the Aladdin movie, the live-action Aladdin movie for Disney. The Gentleman, the movie, not the Netflix show. Now he has a Netflix show called The Gentleman. But within a short period of time, we've had The Covenant, which is a movie that he released last year with Jake Gyllenhaal, I believe. You have now this movie, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And then I don't know what the next movie he has lined up for this year, but we'll talk about when that time comes. So let's talk about this movie in particular. I didn't know that this movie is actually based off of a true story. And essentially, this story was what Ian Fleming used to base off his character James Bond on. So apparently what happened here, and this was all during World War II, right? I believe it was World War II. I just want to make sure that I am remembering this correctly. Yeah, World War II. Winston Churchill, in an attempt to do what he can to make a dent in the war and to wipe out the Nazi regime, he formulated kind of like a secret spy group to do a lot of things behind the scenes. And a lot of these characters were based off of those actual people that did these things. Henry Cavill plays Gus March Phillips, who is like the leader of the group. You have Alan Ritchson, who plays Anders Lassen, Isa Gonzalez, who plays Marjorie Stewart. And the movie ends with them showing real photos of these people and kind of like what happened to them after the events of what took place in the movie. Now, going into this movie, I had no idea about any of this stuff. So after the fact, I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, that's fascinating. And obviously, Gus is the basis that Ian Fleming used, the person that Ian Fleming used as inspiration for James Bond. And then, we all know, the books came out with James Bond, became a huge hit, and then we got the movies out of all that, right? And then James Bond is now a permanent fixture in pop culture history. I don't think this movie will be part of that history, though. I found this movie to be very boring. Very, very boring. And it's kind of weird to say that when you think about a movie like this where you have a spy group. Anytime I get a chance to watch Nazis catch it, I am all for it. All the time. And I'll always be for it. And the moments where they were going up against the Nazis here, I was like, all right, this is cool. But everything else around it was just like... I fell asleep 5 times during this movie. And this movie was just a 2-hour movie. I wasn't tired. And I just came out off of a high from watching Challengers. So maybe Challengers, you could say, maybe Challengers kind of wore me out. But man, was this a slog to get through. Really, really tough. Really tough. It was kind of a lot of time tongue-in-cheek, very heavy on the British humor, which again, I loved Lock, Stock. I love Snatch. Snatch is a fantastic movie. Rock and Rolla, great movies. I love these movies. The Sherlock Holmes movies with RDJ. But this one was just like, end already. That's how I felt most of the time. This is one of the rare times that I actually contemplated walking out. I didn't. I stuck it out. But I was this close to walking out of this movie. I couldn't. It was just... And I don't know what it was. If it was just mainly the pacing of the movie, the dialogue, which was just like very piss poor. The cinematography was okay, and the action scenes were good, but the action scenes felt like they were very much full of themselves. Where this ragtag group of spies, they walked around basically like their shit don't stink. And I didn't really felt like they had to struggle a lot. And I'll explain. So there's this one moment where the movie starts off, you see this Nazi group boarding a boat, just a regular sailboat, looks like a fishing boat. And you have Alan Ritchson there with Henry Cavill. Now imagine these two hulky, bulky gentlemen, right? Alan Ritchson is probably well known for his show Reacher on Prime Video. Huge freaking dude, man. And of course you have Henry Cavill, who is also equally big. And they're pretending to be Swedish fishermen. And you have Alan Ritchson with this laughable Swedish accent. Oh, hello there. Welcome aboard the ship. We are just 2 lone fishermen. What is happening? Now, I don't know if that was done on purpose, but I was just like laughing. I was like, this is so bad. And the boat was boarded basically by like 15 Nazi guys. And just like that, they took him out without breaking a sweat. Right? That was one thing. Another time, they were like infiltrating a base, a Nazi base. And, you know, they had their plan all laid out because they were going to rescue somebody, right? It's like, all right, you're going to do this, we're going to do this, and blah, 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 blah. Most of the time, they're just walking. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, what's in there? Boop, boop. No challenge. Now, I get it. Like, these guys are probably very good and very awesome and all that. But they just walk around. Bap, 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 bap. Oh, no, we're spotted. Da, 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 da. Brut. Okay. Huh? It felt like as if you were on easy mode or story mode of a video game. And even story mode will give you more of a challenge than what I'm seeing here. Now, when you set the table up to be that, and then when you get to the climactic end, where now we actually have people getting hurt and possibly dying, it's kind of hard to like believe it at this point or be invested, you know? Because now all of a sudden they're struggling. Like, oh my God, there's too many of them. But oh, I got shot. Oh no, dudes, you went through most of the movie without any challenges, and you were able to accomplish everything. Now you're having problems. It suspends my belief or suspends disbelief. You know what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make it believable, and it takes me out of it. It takes me completely out of it. And not for the lack of trying either. Like Henry Cavill acted his ass off, like he always does in all the movies that he's in. You know, Alan Ritchson, who I never watched Reacher, so this is my first exposure to him. I think he's a cool dude, right? Isa Gonzalez, I'm familiar with her with other stuff that she's done. I thought her character she was supposed to be kind of like the femme fatale, kind of like the 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 bombshell that bombshell spy who uses her attraction to get your attention, and then she's going to do something in the behind the scenes. All she did was talk very smart for the most part. She's a smart talker. She's very intelligent. But I didn't really feel like she was a threat. Yes, it broke my suspension of disbelief. That's correct. But yeah, is that what I'm trying to say? Yeah, I guess so. And it was just, yeah, it felt like it didn't know what it wanted to really do for the most part. It wanted to tell a story, and it did. But I felt like it could have been done maybe as a short story or as a short like a short film. Maybe if this was like a limited series, 4 episodes. Yeah. But it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And like I said, I don't want to knock the performances from those involved because I did feel like they were acting their ass off. But I think it basically boils down to the writing of the movie. The dialogue was kind of weak. The guy who was playing Winston Churchill was kind of laughable in a way. That was Rory Kinnear. It was kind of like a comedic version of Churchill. The main Nazi guy, that was like the big baddie, Heinrich Löhr, who was played by actor Till Schweiger. He was cool. He was a badass. And I every time he was around, I was like, this guy is going to do something. And when he was plotting on taking out Marjorie Stewart, that was the character played by Isa Gonzalez, I was like, uh-oh, she's in for a world of hurt. Watch out now. So he was good. But the movie as a whole just was weak overall. And I didn't enjoy it. And it's hard for me to recommend a movie like that. Now, it's not going to be like a 2-star rating. I gave it a 3-star on Letterboxd, 3 out of 5. Because like I said, I thought the performances were strong and solid, but what they were given was very weak as a backdrop. And I don't know, maybe Guy Ritchie should take a break because he's putting out way too much stuff. Maybe he needs to like marinate on stuff a little bit more. Marinate on some of the stories he wants to tell. Because I'm hearing pretty decent stuff from his show on Netflix. So he has it in him. It's just I don't know where he's going with his feature films. Why not 2? 2. So my difference between a 2 and a 3 is, again, the performances from like Henry Cavill, Alan Richardson, despite let's push aside the really cheesy and terrible Swedish accent he tried to put on there, and Isa Gonzalez, their performances were really strong. What they were given wasn't great, but they did what they did with what they worked with. And when the action scenes were happening, there were parts of the action scenes that were fun to watch. I woke up during the action scenes. Now, granted, like I said before, some of the action scenes seemed very easy. You know, like they basically gave the scene a layup and they didn't really have to work hard for it. But I cannot ding too much from those things. And the fact that this was all based off an actual true story, for me, I found that fascinating. So I have to give it some merits on that, because if it wasn't for this movie, I would not have known that this was a true thing, like a true to life thing. And also learning and knowing that this is what Ian Fleming used as a basis for his James Bond character, I think that's fascinating too. But I think at this point, why don't we just make Henry Cavill James Bond? Because I think he could pull it off. I think he'll be great. Alan Richardson, I want to see him do a lot more action flicks. And he seems to be a very decent actor. He knows how to speak. He's good at dialogue, even though the dialogue they gave him was piss poor. But he executed. I hear a lot of great things of him in the Reacher show. That's why people love that show, because of him. I would love to see him do more stuff on the big screen. So if anything, from what I've seen here, it leads me to say, I want to see more of this person here. I want to see more of this person here. I want to see more of this guy do this. I want to see more of this guy do that. You know, movie's not great. I can't recommend it, but it's not a 2. Unlike the next film I'm going to be talking about. Oh, I'm just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. You're just going to have to wait and see. But yeah, so that is Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's a movie. You know, I think other people have enjoyed it more than I did. Let's see here. On Rotten Tomatoes, currently. Yeah, look at this. On the critic side, 71%. On the audience score side, 93%. So maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But it seems like a lot more people out there enjoyed this movie a lot more than I did. Maybe it's also the British humor that threw me off also. Because like I said, it's very, very heavy on that British type of humor. That at certain times I kind of have to be in the mood for or ready for, if that makes any sense. But yeah. So maybe it's just me. And if it is me, I'd love to hear from those of you who have seen this movie and who enjoyed it. And I want to know, what is it about the movie that you enjoyed the most? Because I would be very fascinated to find out about that. All right. So that was my second movie of the week. My third movie of the week was Rebel Moon Part 2. Now, I know you're probably saying, Renee, you hated the last movie. You know, why did you decide to watch this one, knowing that you didn't like the first one? Because I am a glutton for punishment. And I want to be able to talk about it. You know, I want to be able to talk about these things and say, and instead of being that person on the internet that puts down something and they didn't see it themselves, I'm going to actually see it, so that if I am going to put something down, I have every right to put it down because I actually saw it myself. Because there's a lot of those people online who will shit on something or praise something and they haven't even seen it. You see it all the time. And I always ask people that all the time. Like when I react to a movie, like a movie trailer, And I see people chiming in. It's like, oh, this is going to be shit. This is a waste of time. I was like, have you seen it yet? How do you know that? See, there you go. Hey, Renee. But Renee, you hated the last one. Why did you watch this one? Well, that's the reason. I want to give an actual opinion on something that I seen. And that's why I'm here to talk about Rebel Moon Part 2. So, quick recap on my experience with Part 1. Saw Part 1 and didn't like it. It felt very shallow. It's a great movie to play in the background at a party with all the special effects and the craziness happening. If you were at a bar and you know how some bars have projectors up on the thing, and they have things like, if they had this movie playing, awesome, perfect for that. Great screensavers. A lot of the slow motion scenes and all that will work brilliantly as screensavers on your desktop. But I didn't feel anything for any of the characters we were introduced to. I didn't care about any of the stakes that they put out there. I just felt very empty. And it was just another very typical Zack Snyder film that focuses a lot on visual effects, visual sides of storytelling, without any substance. I thought the dialogue was bad. Sofia Boutella is a great action actor, action performer, but I don't think she is a strong actress to lead a movie. There's a difference there, and I feel like people need to understand that. You can be great at action scenes. You know, someone who can pull off the stunts, someone who can make it believable that she's actually kicking your ass, and she does that 100% well. But when she's like trying to be emotional and act and speak dialogue, it doesn't work for me. For me, I think that's where she's very weak at. So to give her this leading role, I don't know if that was a good choice. So those are just some of my quick thoughts that I took away, my takeaways from the first movie. And I saw the first movie on a big screen because I was lucky enough to be invited to a screening for that. This one I just watched from home on Netflix. And I was wondering, with part 2, am I going to basically experience and watch the same thing that I did in part 1? And I will tell you this. Yep, I did. I think it was even worse than the first one. And I'll tell you why it was so bad for me. And I clocked it. I kept looking at the timestamps, and I even wrote down, how long a lot of this took. Now this movie is 2 hours and 2 minutes. Okay. For the first half of the movie, for 1 hour, nothing fucking happened. You had people who survived the war, or the battle from the last movie, now going back to their little village town, seeing who else survived there. So you have Sofia Boutella's character back. You have Jamin Hansu, who I love. He's back. You have everyone else there. Every character that had their hero introduction and their hero moment in the last film, they all made it back. And for the next hour, we watched them harvest. I shit you not. They get welcomed in by the townfolk who are praising them for what they did. But they also know that the remaining forces are going to come back to collect the crops that they're demanding from these people. So they are going to take a stand. Right? They're going to use the crops as their gateway to take down this regime. So literally we get a slow-mo montage of people harvesting crops. I'm not joking. And just think about what is involved in crop harvesting. We got all of that in slow motion. So you have people with the sickles slicing the grains, picking the grains up, tying the grains together, putting it in the back of a truck. Then you have those sorting the grain, throwing the grain into the air, and like, whee! And kids running around like, yeah! People busheling them up, putting them into bags, stacking the bags. All for 1 fucking hour. Now, there are some stuff that does happen within this hour. Because, like what was hinted to us at the end of part 1, the big baddie guy, Atticus Noble, I guess, right? Played by Ed Skrein, he is acting his ass off in these 2 films. He really is. If there was one particular actor that really acted well, it's him. And he plays a big bad guy. Djimon Hounsou does a good job, but I feel like his talents are kind of wasted in this. So we find out that he's back, and they're, resurrecting him. They saved his life in a very Star Wars-y kind of way. Again, I don't want to mention again all the influences and things that Zach borrowed from Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all these other sci-fi fantasy type of properties, because I already went through that in the first one when I did my review on that. Yes, that still exists here too, and you can kind of call out these moments where, oh yeah, that reminds me of this and that reminds me of that. I'm not going to do that this time. But he comes back, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get back at these rebels? And she calls the Sophia's character, Cora, who's named Cora, by the way, the scar giver, because he has now this long-lasting scar that she gave him when she killed him in the first movie. So now, the scar giver. I will call her the scar giver. Scar giver, man. Why are you calling her that? Look what she did to me. She gave me a scar. Damn that woman. She will pay. Oh, and she's amongst those guys. All right, then we know. So that stuff happens in the first hour too. What else happens in the first hour is, I guess during the time that they were crop harvesting and harvesting their crops, the village people learned so much about these new people that they'd never met before. And they decided to pay them tribute during this big banquet. All of a sudden now, the village people created these special flags to give them, to represent their characters. So we spent the next 20 minutes of them each individually presenting these banners, these little flags, to each individual person. you get this because you represent hot and you have hot. So we drew a hot on this flag and here it is. You are blah, 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 and da, da, da. You have the will and the strength of the goat and you have this goat flag. Now, I'm making a lot of that stuff up, but I'm pretty much sticking to the premise there. And then we get a forced relationship between Sophia's character and this other guy, one of the other guys, who you knew they were paying way too much attention to, that something was going to happen. And something did happen. But there was a forced relationship. They had sex. And just like in the first movie, they used this as a vehicle to have her explain her biggest conflict. And her biggest kind of trauma that she carries with her was that she was the one that helped assassinate this princess. They explained a little bit about this royal family in the first movie. And she was the one that was part of the evil team. And she was one of the ones that helped pretty much assassinate this princess. So she carries with her the burden that she killed this princess. And she doesn't tell anyone this, so she's telling homie for the very first time. So this, in a way, was more backstory and more explanation of her character. All right. That's one way to do it. But separately, after the flag ceremony at this banquet, we now have this scene, intimate scene, at one of the banquet tables. And you already knew something was going to happen. Why? Because everyone is sitting on just one side of the table, which is very unnatural. But this was a moment where each person, and we're going to go around the table now, what is the biggest trauma that you have and that you feel sorry for? Go. Well, for me, it was blah, blah, blah. What about you? Well, for me, it was yada, yada, yada. Next. Well, for me, it was blah, 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 blah. I was like, this is so bad. Why is all of this being so telegraphed and so poorly executed? He was not even being clever about it. And I'm sitting here watching this thing just like, really? We're doing it like this? All right, let me guess. That person's next. Oh, yep, there we go. All right, what's your story? It really felt like a video game. Maybe Zack Snyder should start writing and directing video games. Because it sounds to me like he has that down packed. But you don't need that in movies. Go back to, again, I'm using this as an example because he definitely has a lot of influence from this. The original Star Wars, Episode 4. What we knew of Luke Skywalker was that he grew up on a farm. He had he has an aunt and an uncle. He has a weird connection with old Ben. Aunt and uncle dies. Ben tells him that his father was once a Jedi. Well, there's nothing left for me here. I want to help Ben. You do your thing. That's all we knew of Luke in that movie. Then we get introduced to Han and Chewie. We know nothing about these two. And we didn't have to. We just knew that Han had a bounty on his head. He needs some extra cash so he could pay off said bounty and be done with it. And Chewie's his buddy. We know nothing about Chewie. In the second movie, again, we don't even know much more about these two. But we know that he's stubborn and he's a scoundrel and blah, 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 right? We know Princess Leia. She's royalty. She's hard-headed, da-da-da, this and that. Strong-minded, strong-willed, and nothing more than that. We didn't have to sit through 20 minutes of exposition on each person's background. Well, I did this thing for Jabba the Hutt. And, you know, at the first sign of trouble, I dropped all my cargo and I ran away. And maybe that was a big mistake, but it's a mistake that I have to live with for the rest of my life. What about you, princess? Well, I had a dad that bestowed upon me that I always have to be strong. And no, we didn't get any of that shit. We learned to like the characters because of what we saw them do and how it affected those people around them. We didn't have to have these big hero intro moments. We didn't have to have this long exposition of them talking about their backstory or doing it in a weird kind of camouflage way of having the village people present them flags describing their characters to everybody when they don't really know them and they just know them because they were all harvesting crops together. Okay. So it's just really bad writing. Really bad writing. And I guarantee you, if you took that first hour and you cut down or you removed all the slow motion, you would have yourself 20 minutes worth of movie. I could be off on the math, but I guarantee you it's going to be around that ballpark. Around that ballpark. So what happens in the second half of the movie? That's where the big conflict comes in. This was their big stand. This was their big Two Towers moment. Or Return of the King moment. Because the guys come in, they see, oh my God, this guy's still alive. And there's more exposition. Think about this. If you were the bad guys and you knew the rebels who basically attacked you and one of them killed you or tried to kill you and they're in that town, wouldn't you just blow up the town? Instead, they land, they come out, and they proceed to have a 10-minute dialogue between themselves and Sofia Boutella. Okay. And then this is where the villagers have their last stand. There's a lot of fighting going on, which is cool. Look, I'm not going to take anything away from the action scenes. But of course, we do get a whole shit ton of slow motion again. And of course, everyone has their own hero moment. So you have the Asian actress, Bai Duna, who plays this character called Nemesis. In the trailer, she's the one that looked like she had the two lightsabers, but they're really swords. So she is protecting the kids and the women. So she is taking her own last stand, and she's fighting these guys. Now, remember, in the last movie, she was badass, and she killed a lot of people. Why is it she's struggling with 3 guys? Because there has to be some sort of big climactic moment here. And one of the boys who took a liking to her, is there watching the whole thing happen. It's like, oh no, she's about to die. So I need to defend her. Runs up to the big guy and stabs him in the knee. Creates this opening that she's able to finish him off. But unfortunately, she dies. She got hurt badly. But why is it that someone who was able to take out maybe 20 plus people in the last movie, why was she struggling with 3 guys? Jamin Hansu had his own final moment, and he teamed up with somebody, another one, holding off this bridge. And they do one of the classic things where it looks like they were able to defeat them all. And all of a sudden you hear, doom, 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 doom. Oh no, it's a big giant mech that has guns on it and it's going nuts. Like, oh no, we're not going to survive this. So of course they do the very typical kind of, haha, you thought you had us. You know. So everyone had their hero, and then the guy said that they paid way too much attention to. He eventually dies. He catches the business. Of course, Sophia has her moment with him, and just like, oh, I love you. So that was supposed to be an emotional moment, which I didn't feel anything for. You rewind back on this stream, you saw me get emotional just watching a Jim Henson trailer. This one that's really supposed to evoke emotion didn't do a damn thing for me. Why? Because I don't care about these people. The movies did not make me care enough. Plus, most of it felt rushed anyway and forced. Another wasted person in this whole thing is Anthony Hopkins too, who plays the voice of the robot Jimmy. Great voice. But Jimmy is more like the observer. He's like the watcher. He watched a lot of things happening. He doesn't want to get involved. But he had to get involved in this one moment. Because he couldn't take it anymore. He's like, oh, these guys are fucked up. I can't just stand by and watch it anymore. So at the end of the day, homeboy who got resurrected dies again. This time he gets beheaded, which again, that moment should have felt more powerful, and it didn't. They were able to wipe out the entire force there, or at least the ones that we see, the ones that came to get them. You know, we lost some of our main characters that we, I guess, quote unquote, grew to love from the last movie. I don't know. And some remain. But then there was like a twist at the end. Because remember, like, we spent so much focus on Sophia's character with her trauma and the thing that she's living on with her life. Oh, I killed the princess. Did you? She may actually still be alive. What? Nani? Well, I have to find her now. Who's with me? I'll be by your side. We must find this princess. I guess to restore balance to the universe? Oh, does that sound familiar? And of course, Jimmy the Robot's like, well, I've always lent my loyalty to the royal family. And if she is still around, then I have no choice but to join in on this journey. So guess what, folks? We're going to get more Rebel Moon. So yeah, Rebel Moon Part 2. Farm Simulator, as AKB Mobile says. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore the chats. I was just, when I get in the zone, I get in the zone. Farm Simulator and making character banners for an hour. What the fuck? I can do that in Dragon's Dogma too. Yeah, exactly. And oh, you said it felt like a video game. I commented, yep. It really felt like a video game. If you watch the first movie and the second movie and you put it together, it does feel like kind of a video game arc story. And here's my other takeaway of this. Now, I don't think Zach ever intended to split these movies into two. I think if you hear him talk about it, he made it very obvious that he wanted to do one giant 4 to 5 hour movie. That being said, Part 2 is mostly him just trying to extend the runtime of this Part 2 to make it feel like a legitimate second movie. Where, like I said, if you cut out a lot of the fat in the first hour, you end up maybe with 45 minutes, 50 minutes of actual movie that you should care about. You take that and you slap it onto part one, that's Rebel Moon right there. That should have been your movie. So it felt to me that he purposely extended this movie to make it feel like a legit part two when it really wasn't. And it felt like a waste of time. You know, when I got to the major scenes, the big battle and all that, I'm like, okay, now we're finally here. But it didn't, outside of the action moments, the big payoffs never were felt like it was a major impact. There should have been a major impact with this homeboy dying again. But guess what? There wasn't, because we already saw him die before. We knew he brought him back. He was supposed to have this big comeback moment, and he didn't. And I didn't feel like this ragtag crew went through enough to warrant me cheering them on. And when some of them died, like the Asian character, I was like, "Aw." And then, all right, next. When Homeboy died, Gunnar is the character's name, played by Mikael Huisman. When he passed away, I'm just like, And then, of course, she's like crying over him. Oh, I love you. I'm like, okay. Oh, I even forgot to mention this. Out of nowhere, and this is why I kind of say this is kind of like the Return of the King ending. The remaining ships that were in the sky, they were taken out by, all of a sudden, this other group that we were introduced to from the first movie. They just came out of nowhere in a very Star Wars-y way. It's just like, here we are. We're going to take these guys down. Pew, pew. Go on your left. I'm going on my left. Go on your right. I'm going on my right. And when that was all happening in the sky, that's when the guy was just like looking up. It's like, oh, it's all beautiful. Bleh. Dead. So yeah, this movie is laughable. It really is laughable. This is the movie I gave 2 stars out of 5. I could have given it 1, but there were some parts of it that did entertain me, whether it was supposed to or not, because I was laughing. And I guess for that, I gave it bonus points. But also, it's because, look, there are certain things that Zack Snyder does well that I'm never going to take away from him. He can create an amazing visual. Hands down, he knows how to create amazing visuals. Slow motion stuff, he's the king of that. You want a great wallpaper on your desktop? You want a great screensaver? Take anything from his movies, and that's like beautiful stuff there. But I don't know what's going on with his writing and his directing, but it is just shallow. 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 And there's just no substance in it at all. And look, when I put out my first review for part 1, I had a lot of people saying that I'm just a hater, that I hate Zack Snyder. One person even called me a neckbeard. Say all you want. If you liked the movie, great. I'm glad you did. If this movie and the 2 parts worked for you, awesome. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. If you enjoyed those movies, then great. I'm happy for you. But I'll be the first to say that these aren't good movies. My opinion, they are not good movies. Waste of time. And I had to see it for myself in order to understand that. I already understood it when I saw the first part. I was like, all right, here's part 2. Let's see where we go from here. And if anything, we took several steps back, even further back from where the first movie was. Now that we have these two parts out, the rumor was, or his plan was, that he's now going to release a director's cut of Rebel Moon. The big question is, should we even care? Because he said it from day one. His first part of Rebel Moon was a Netflix part. It was stuff that he did for Netflix. It wasn't the movie he wanted to put out. And he did it for them, knowing that he's going to be able to do his own version after part 2 comes out. The fuck does that mean? So are we going to get a completely different movie here? Why would we have to care after we already got what we got? The bigger question is also, will I watch it? Time will tell, and we will just see. But yeah, if you've watched these movies and you feel like I do, let me know in the comments. If you've watched them and you don't feel like I do and you enjoyed them, also let me know in the comments. I want to know why you liked it, why you disliked it. And again, if you did like it, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you did. Because just like art, movie is subjective. We all have our own takeaways from it all. But for me, big, stinking pile of poo-poo. Poo-poo! You blew it! Fuck off! Yeah. AKB. Yes, you should care. You have to finish the 2-star trilogy watched. Yeah. And look, I hate shitting on things. It's fun, but I that's not what I go out and seek to do. I know a lot of people love shitting on shit just for the sake of shitting on shit. I don't like doing it. But if I have to, I enjoy it. But I'm just being honest about it. I also love praising stuff. You just saw it happen. The contrast between my thoughts on Challengers and my thoughts on Rebel Moon. You've seen the contrast. I'm an equal opportunity commentator, and I will comment equally. Whether I like it, something, or I hated something, I will equally do it. All right. Lastly, got to talk about X-Men 97, Episode 7. And for this, I'm going to make sure that I put up spoilers up there because, like what I do talk spoilers just in case those who haven't had a chance to watch it yet, they can avoid being spoiled. So if I lose some of you now, I totally understand. But I do have to talk about X-Men 97. Episode 7. So X-Men 97, Episode 7, in a way, it's a transition into what we're probably going to get in, I think I read this somewhere. It's supposed to be like a 3-part climax ending for the season. And we do get a lot of setup, and we get a reveal here that was very fascinating to see. The episode itself starts off with, we finally get a closure for our buddy Gambit. Thank you very much for the visual. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It was a reminder and a suggestion from last week too, so I make sure that I do that now all the time. When it comes to like these type of things, when it comes to the movie stuff, I ain't gonna put it up there because, you know, that's just my thing. But we get our funeral for Gambit. Very touching moment here. And I love that Nightcrawler himself dressed up as the priest and is giving the eulogy. Very, very nice touch there. I loved it. But the one person missing from this whole thing was Rogue. Why? Because Rogue is gone rogue, son. She is angry and she is going to get down to the bottom of who was responsible for the stuff that happened in Genosha. So we see her wrecking shop everywhere. She ends up on some military base with General Ross. So now we have our animated version of General Ross here. She comes in, and I love that he says, like, you know, you guys are all freaking out just for one mutant. Remember, this facility was meant to, you know, contain the Hulk. And of course, she just rips through it, just like nothing. And, you know, she's like, I need to find Trask, sugar. Give me Trask. I need to find out where Trask is. Because you know what he done. He done did. Yeah. Which leads Rogue to actually tracking down Captain America, which was like a nice surprise. And I thought that was awesome. That she went one, you know, she confronted Captain America. And she's like, you know what's going on, sugar? And basically Captain America's like, look, I'm on the same page as you. We're trying to figure out why this is happening. But I'm doing it by the books. I'm not like you. You know, I can't be all rogue-like. She's like, oh, yeah? Well, if you ain't going to be with me, then whatever. You're not going to need this. And she does the most dirtiest thing where she takes this shield and she just tosses it as far as she can. Like, fuck you. Bye. It's like, oh, that crazy woman. So she's on a rampage. She's on a world tour of hurt. Because at the end of the day, she wants to find out who did this. And this is the very first time we hear her mentioning that Gambit was my man. She said, that's my man. You killed him. Because they tracked down where the guy with the glasses. I keep forgetting who the guy with the glasses is. He's the one that he's like the big mastermind that worked with Track. I need to pull up this info because I'm very bad with names, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. But I really suck when it comes to character names. But let's see here. Let's see. Let's just get every character. Come on. Jesus, this thing sucks. This website just keeps giving me bullshit. Oh, stupid waste of time. Well, anyway, you know who I'm talking about if you know what I'm talking about. The guy with the glasses, the guy that was like working with this guy who creates Master Mold, and you know he's out to like get rid of the mutants and all that. So they track him down, and you know they find out where he is, and he's basically like, I don't know where Track is. Like I'm out of the game. I'm not doing this stuff anymore. So he says, right? He's like, well, I don't believe you. And the rest of the episode is the X-Men team finding out the location of Track because it was Oliver who actually reached out to the X-Men and says, hey, I need to talk to you guys because this whole situation is not exactly what you think it is. Gives him a location and all that, and they go look for him. Now, before we lead to that, there was a very interesting moment where the X-Men team finally makes their way to Genosha, and they're seeing the aftermath of everything that happens. And these are some of the great lines from the series so far, and they're coming from Beast. And he quotes Mr. Rogers, where he's like, everywhere you see people helping, people are helping people, or something like that. And that's such a great line because, they get there and they're like, I don't even know where to start. You could start helping people by looking for those who are helping people. And then, the reporter comes in, and I guess he had this like romantic interest with this reporter. And at first, he's grateful that she's there because she's going to help document all the stuff that's happening here. But at the same time, he kind of has resentment because he says, like, maybe it was Charles's mistake to focus so much on making sure that you all accept us instead of us looking out for us. And that was such a powerful moment of what he said. Like maybe Charles was wrong. Maybe the focus here shouldn't have been us making sure that you were okay with us and working so hard for you accepting us. We should have just focused on us being us and being there for our own people and being our own people. Because look what happened. We let our guard down, and this is what happens. Great, powerful moment there altogether. So then we fast forward and we find the team tracking down where Oliver is at this like secret base. Morph is one of the funniest guys of the series. I love Morph. He's becoming like one of my favorites. He has some like very comedic moments here, which is great. But we find Oliver, and it looks like Oliver has been like working on a lot of stuff for certain folk. And Morph refers to him as Oppenheimer because he is like the creator of destruction. And it looks like he's about to like commit suicide or off himself. I shouldn't say that because for some reason YouTube likes to flag me when I say stuff like that. But he's like, I'm so tired of this. It was not my intention to do all of this stuff. And Rogue gets to him, gets him by the collar. He's like, I'm sorry. I have nothing for you guys. This is beyond me at this point. Like people have abused me and used me for all of this stuff. It's no longer in my control. And she basically says, you're right. I have nothing for you either. And she lets him go. Just basically, she might as well have just thrown him off the roof. And I was like, oh my God. And everyone else was just like, Rogue, what are you doing? We don't want... Why are you taking it to this level now? This is not who we are. But Rogue don't give a shit. She's angry, man. And also we hear, terminate, boom. So like, oh no, watch out, here's a Sentinel. It's not the Sentinel we are expecting. Apparently, this new tech now is that Oliver himself, has now turned into an organic humanoid Sentinel who is uber powerful and is wrecking shop, knocking them each one by one. And every time he takes one out, he's just like, terminate, terminate, terminate. And then out of nowhere, we see this big EMP kind of grenade go off, pretty much knocks him out. And lo and behold, it's Cable. Cable is back. Cable's back. Cyclops is like, Cable, what are you doing here? I'm like, what am I doing here? What the hell? I just saved your ass. This is a new form of Sentinel and blah, 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 this and that. And Jean Grey is like, oh, wait. Could it be? And he says to her, like, get out of my head. You're not my mom. You're not her. And this is the first time Cyclops realizes, like, oh my God, this is my son. Cable is my son. I was like, yeah, Dad, it's me. Blah, all this stuff. So it looks like we're going to get like a team up with Cable and the X-Men. But the big, big, big reveal here is there is this mysterious purple guy who shows up at the guy with the glasses at his home. He's in bed. And like, oh, ha ha ha. Everything is coming exactly as you planned. And then we hear like the song in the background. One-eyed, one-horned, giant purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, giant purple people eater. And this guy just basically murks this dude. Boom, dead. And then we get a moment where we see Sinister, and it's like, oh, what's happening here? Is this plan gonna work? And all that. Oh, it's my plan from the beginning. Just trust me. So we get the confirmation that Sinister is actually working for somebody else, this big baddie. And then we see this big baddie in a barbershop. And there's Magneto. Magneto is alive, and he's being held captive by this guy, who is very creepy vibes. And he proceeds to give him a shave while he's saying all of these like crazy, creepy things, like serial killer stuff. Like, oh, you moist the hairs to make them smooth, and I'll help the blade go smoother and down, and blah blah blah, and this and that, and ha ha ha, I'm crazy and creepy. The voice is Theo James, by the way, who has an amazing voice. Turns out this character is Bastion. Now, I didn't know who Bastion is, I'll admit. This is a character I am not familiar with. All of this stuff is not part of the X-Men continuity that I am not familiar with at all. So I had to look it up, because I'm like, who the hell is this guy? So I looked him up, and basically, here's the whole thing. And I want to make sure. Bastion. Bastion, or Sebastian Gilberti, if you prefer, is a mutant-hating machine that emerged from the merger of Nimrod and Master Mold after fighting the X-Men. Siege Perilous' mystical energy allowed him to be reborn as a cybernetic hybrid in a human-like body, and Bastion was raised as a human Sebastian Gilberti, but soon became interested in anti-mutant movements through his deep-seated dislike of mutants, which led him to want to rid the world of them all. With his cybernetic body, Bastion possesses superhuman abilities such as inhuman strength, speed, endurance, agility, and like all Sentinels, he has the ability to adapt. So he can modify his exterior and mechanism to equalize his abilities, making him a major threat to mutants. Bastion can also transform inorganic matter into techno-mechanical material, over which he has total control. In addition, thanks to the techno-organic virus, he can reanimate the dead and has access to the senses of any person he has infected with the virus. So he is fully connected to them and can see and hear what they do, and he can send them informations. Bastion also uses technopathy, try saying that 3 times fast, and technoformation, and can modify his appearance and shape so that, for example, he has wings and increases his size. His abilities also include energy manipulation, telepathic immunity, as well as teleportation and the ability to travel through time. It must be said that this is a wide range of abilities that makes him a major threat. So this guy can do it all. This guy is like the Swiss Army knife of all mutant-hating people. So I'm assuming that he's come from the future. That's why Cable is familiar with him, and that's why Cable is here to kind of help out with all that. And he's working with Sinister to wipe out the mutants, obviously. The fact that he could resurrect the dead expects some people who have gone or may have passed away. There's now a potential that we will see those people again. Maybe as he formulates his army of anti-mutant people, or whatever the case is. But lo and behold, this is the revelation of the new baddie, the overall bad guy who Mr. Sinister is working for, that is the major threat of this season. And that's pretty much how the episode ends. I should also note that also in the episode, we have this interesting moment with Jubilee and Sunspot. I'm just going to call him Sunspot because we all know that's who he is. Going home and finally revealing to his mom that he is a mutant. And she's relieved, but at the same time, she's like, but we can't keep this public. We got to be very secretive with who you are and who you keep as friends around you because the boardroom and business and da da da. So it's kind of like a great thing to happen, but also sad thing because he still has to hide. And it brings forward again the realization that mutants are still not acceptable publicly all across the board, which is a no big surprise there. Like, no shit. We knew all that already. So that was another this episode alone was very emotional. Very emotional, very it had a lot of moments that were very sad, uh dreary. Sorry, something I felt something like pinch my eye. Dreary, like lack and loss of hope, dire and all that for the most part. But it's a perfect setup because now there's a lot of excitement and anticipation as to, okay, what is Bastion really going to do? What is his overall plan? And how are the X-Men going to confront this? And what's going to happen with Magneto? And what's happening with Rogue? Because she is so mad that she has lost all control of common sense, you know? But again, it just shows you how great this series is and how exciting everything is. But yeah, that's it. That is basically my whole recap and thoughts on X-Men Episode 7. It still continues to be a fantastic series overall, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. It's funny how I wasn't expecting it to be, but it turned into must-watch TV for me every week. So yeah. So that's it. So that is X-Men 97 episode 7. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you think about it and how are you liking this series so far? What do you think of episode 7? Again, it's a transitional episode. The next 3 episodes, which are going to be the final episodes of the season, are going to be big. And I think I do recall reading that it's going to be a 3-part event, which is going to be very exciting. And one last thing I do want to cover, since it is X-Men related. There was an article that came out, I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago or several days ago, basically saying that X-Men 97 was almost MCU canon, which is very interesting to find out and hear about. So I'm here on Dark Horizons. And basically it says here, Marvel Studios' revival of X-Men the Animated Series with X-Men 97 has been an outstanding success for the streamer, chalking up some of the best reviews of the year so far across any TV series. Fans are loving it and unsurprisingly have been asking all those involved various questions about how they pulled it off and any future plans for the franchise. Many of the answers are expected. Are the team behind it keen to return for more seasons beyond the planned 3? Sure. Would they do a movie version? Yes. Would they like to be involved in the live-action X-Men films when they eventuate? You bet. Director Emi Yonemura, however, had an interesting answer though in a recent interview with Inverse, where she revealed that Marvel head Kevin Feige at one time considered making the show part of the canon of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here's a quote. That has always been something we know was on Kevin Feige's mind. Do we make this part of the MCU? Do we not make this part of the MCU? It's actually gone back and forth quite a few times, and I think we did land in a smart place because X-Men the Animated Series was its own thing, and I think that to continue it, we needed to be our own thing. Could this eventually be established as taking place on one of the other Earths within the multiverse? We'll see. Either way, Marvel seems happy for the show to do its own thing right now. The X-Men 97 production team is already at work on a second season, whilst a third season seems to be in the earliest planning stages as well. So I'm not surprised that that was a thought before this all was said and done, because it would have been an easier way to transition X-Men into the MCU. Do it through the animated show, which a lot of people are already in love with, or they have already has its fan base on and all. And it's a great way to kind of like quickly and smoothly introduce the X-Men into the MCU. But I think you'll be doing it a lot of disservice because I think people want it to organically be introduced. Give us proper introductions to these people in live action form. Give us proper setup with the team as its own. We don't have to have another origin story here, but give us a proper introduction and prep for them, for us to accept them back in live action form within the overall MCU. To do it in an animated form is kind of like a cheap way to do it. It would have been still acceptable for some and probably would have been interesting to see, but I love that X-Men 97, it's its own thing. It's continuing a storyline that took place in the 90s. It's its own universe, its own world, treated separately, just like how DC treated its animated division very separately from the live action stuff. I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, it seems like what Marvel's doing with What If also. A lot of stuff that was in What If we thought was going to spill into live action, but it never did. Keep it separate. I'm perfectly okay with that. Just like in the comic books, that's its own thing. The live action overall story and universe, it's its own thing. That's it. I'm cool with that. We don't need to combine things all the time. Not everything has to be canon. Not everything has to be tied and threaded into each other. Not necessary. So yeah, so that was a very interesting thing to read about. But after all said and done, I think that's going to call it for this morning. I really enjoyed this morning's stream. I'm glad to be back. It was a very heavily review-centric episode, so I hope people are cool with that. If anything, it's going to make it easier for me to kind of add chapters to it later on and to clip out eventually. So let me know what topic or what review stood out to you the most if you're watching this live or if you're watching this after the fact. As always, would love it if you could show your appreciation, like, dislike, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, notification bell, make sure they're on so that you can get notified every time any kind of new episode or stream is live on the channel. And of course, if you want to hear the Movie Time podcast, make sure to subscribe and listen and follow and rate on your podcast platform of choice, wherever podcasts are heard and listened to. With all that said and done, I'm going to head on out for now. Stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your Friday. I will be back live again. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I'm prematurely putting the music on. Hold on. One last big shout out to AKB Mobile. Another cool episode. Thank you and have a good weekend. Really enjoyed your Challenger review. Thought it was going to be a 1-star movie. Oh, well, there you go. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes you never know. But that is why I'm here. That is why I am here to talk about things that you may not be aware of, to maybe make you interested or make it not. Don't know. But I will be back live on Sunday. I need a day to talk about and cover all the latest news that happened this past week. Some interesting things to talk about, especially if you're a fan of Stranger Things like I am. We may have a reveal of what some of the episode titles are and who's involved in directing some of these episodes. Some names really surprised me, so I really want to talk about that stuff. So tune in on Sunday. I'm still not sure what time yet. Best way to know, have those notifications turned on so you know when I'm live. I will make sure to post also in on the channel to alert everyone as to when I'm planning to go live there. So now is the time when I'm going to say goodbye. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend if I don't see you. Stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Peace out, everyone. Bye-bye. I'm not starting soon. I'm ending. Bye.